So we talked about all this incarnation idea as a technique, right? To feel close to others.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And also you mentioned something 6 cause 1 effect, then we drifted.
6 causes and 1 effect.
Then we drifted from it.
Yeah, I haven't really gone into what these 6 causes are because it's too early.
Okay.
Well, one of them is basically, they say remembering, but it's not literally remembering. In Tibetan, the word remembering can also mean become aware of, basically. So just be aware that all sentient beings have been our mother, or recognizing even that all sentient beings have been our mothers. And that's the first cause. And then the second is to remember what they've done for us, to become aware of what they've done for us, done to us, or done for us. And then the next step is to want to give something back. So that's basically the meditation, and I've not put it in those words, but that's what it refers to. So really going back in time, basically. I'm back in time, not literally going back in time, but becoming aware of all these lives we've had before. And at some point in time, everyone has been incredibly close to us in such a way that they've been so kind to us. And everyone has been so kind to us. Everyone. And so what could we give back to others? That's kind of where, that's the goal in the end. What could we do? What could we do for others in some way that gives them some lasting happiness after? So that's where it starts. But we want to get that closeness. And that's exactly that. Through remembering, or through going back in time and saying, although we forgot and things are different now, there's no reason we should just ignore the fact that everyone has once been so close to us. That's the whole method here. So closeness, to generate a closeness. That these are all really, really close beings that we don't remember. That's simply it. They don't remember, we don't remember.
Understood.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, anyone else? Yes?
You also mentioned there are 2 methods. One is this.
Yeah. So this is one method, but the other method I haven't even started. I haven't even gone into. I can give you the name. It's equalizing and exchanging self with others, or self for others, depending on how you translate it. But that's a lot more about recognizing that we're pretty much the same in what we really want, cherishing others, that this is the way to find happiness, only obsessing over ourselves. We've already, to some degree, explained this. So there's this the emphasis on putting ourselves into other person's shoes, basically, and exchanging ourselves with others in the sense that try to think like this other person, try to almost like you don't become them literally, but think you were them, and therefore, or think what it would be like to be them. Even, I mean, there's some disagreement on that, but the point is basically to exchange yourself in that you now pay the same attention to their happiness as you usually do when it comes to yourself. That's the whole goal. But there's a lot of steps that we need to go through, and I haven't explained them yet. Yeah.
So we'll go into that?
Yeah, of course. That's important.
I have a question.
And then we can pass it to the back, yeah. No, go ahead, because you're close by.
Okay. So. You said that in order to, about the selflessness, that we need, firstly, healthy sense of self. But it's very subtle. It's like, how can you know?
Well, a healthy sense of self. A healthy sense of self in the sense, like, I gave the example earlier of people who have some very serious issues because maybe they have no memory, like memory issues. They have no memory of like what happened yesterday. People who suffer from short-term memory loss. So if that is the case for many, many years, how can they develop a sense of I, a sense of identity? Or people, I'm trying to think of like extreme cases of abuse, and even then it doesn't mean that you have mental problems, by the way. I personally know a Tibetan who's been so abused. He was so abused. His whole family died in an earthquake in Tibet when he was 7 years old. He was an orphan. He was sent to China, and he was He was sexually abused big time, terribly. And he became this incredible, kind and compassionate person, helping a lot of people. So there's no guarantee that you actually have a lot of issues. But oftentimes it is when children are uprooted, if they lose their parents, they're part of the foster system, especially in the West, where there's no other people to really take care of you, basically. It's like the government basically does it, and it's very hard to build that kind of strong identity. You don't have an identity. You're just being passed around from one person to the next. Then it could be an issue, but not like ordinarily, like just ordinary people. Yeah, I don't think we have any of you have that issue. It would have become a little more obvious, I think. But it could be wrong, of course.
Okay, but in this case, do you think that they can practice, or a person that?
Oh yeah, they can practice, but it's important if they have the interest, first of all. If they have the interest, they can work through it. But like, to introduce to them this idea right from the beginning without some methods to deal with their issues, I think that could be difficult. So some people just need modern therapy first to deal with some of their problems. That would be very important. And secondly, take it slowly. Take it slowly. It may not be the best thing for them to hear about selflessness. Yeah. But I think they will know themselves. They feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, so when there is overwhelmed, what they should do?
Maybe take a break then. If you feel like you're overwhelmed by it, I mean, I think people that usually they do, you know, if they have a sense of like, well, this is too much, they get up and leave, for instance. And that's totally okay, right? If they're overwhelmed by that. So do you feel like you're worried about that?
It's a challenge for me. When I came across Tibetan Buddhism, it's one of the challenges.
All right, so good to know. I'm glad you're saying that. So let's see how you feel, and be totally honest with yourself and everyone else. If it feels overwhelming, then say so.
Okay.
Always, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But also remember, there is a self. Remember, there is a self. Selflessness doesn't mean there's no self. It's really weird terminology, isn't it? No, there is a self. Maybe we definitely have more time to talk about it later, but the reason they use this terminology, there's a specific reason. There's a particular type of self that doesn't exist, but there's a self. Of course, just pinch yourself.
You mean
Yeah.
on a conventional level, or?
Yeah, we're talking about, on a conventional level. In fact, if the self, the way we think it exists, were to exist, we couldn't exist at all. So actually what's important, the type of self we perceive, if that existed, we'd be non-existent. So it's actually much scarier to think that we create a self in our mind that then we would be non-existent. That's much scarier. Whereas the other type of self that does exist makes everything possible. So in that way, I think it's possibly less scary. Yeah, but we'll get more into it. Yeah.
You talk about like putting yourself in the other person's place and then experiencing the pain and stuff. Like that comes quite naturally to me. But at the same time, it gets so much that it's like, I'm not able to handle that. So now, over the years, I've trained myself to not feel it anymore. So now when you say that you've got to do it, I am all scared about that. If that's the first step to compassion. So.
Yeah. Okay, so let me repeat what you said to be sure I don't misunderstand. You said that it comes natural to you. You have probably a natural tendency since you were little, without anyone teaching you, to put yourself into the other person's shoe.
Yeah, like when you're narrating the story, all the stories that you narrated where you explained the pain. For example, the woman who fought the Chinese army and, she was imprisoned for 30 years. Like I had tears in my eyes.
Pardon?
I had tears in my eyes.
Oh.
So I could just relate to that very much. So then, I've literally blocked all sources of news and everything, because then it gets very heavy for me. So
the tears are not the problem, but the
Okay.
heaviness are.
yeah.
The tears are not a problem. I mean, even this holiness tears up when he hears about the problems other people have. So, yeah, that is not... That's interesting. Okay. It really tears you, it pulls you down. Who else feels that way? Who feels like when they hear about the suffering of others, it pulls them down? Oh, gosh. No, I'm kidding. It's not a problem. It's just good to know. That's just good to know. Okay. So, to know it's impermanent, we have to do meditation on impermanence. I mean, I remember when I talked about permanence, that many of you nodded, kind of showed agreement. So is there a sense that it has to do with thinking that it lasts forever, somehow? Not intellectually, but somehow it feels like it is so concrete and it's always going to be like that. Is that kind of how it feels? Like, for instance, with Ama Ade, right? She went through incredible suffering, but now it's over. She came to Dharamshala, she had incredible experiences with so many people. I mean, wow, she was famous. I mean, famous in a really good way. And her life turned around big time. So yeah, she had all the suffering, but it's gone now. So now she's not suffering. Is it still difficult that she did? The fact that she did was still difficult?
No.
Okay, so here we go. So the fact that she did suffer, but it's not, yeah, this is really our sense of permanence. I think that's something very much part of us, and we're not even aware of it. Yes, do you want to say something to that, related to that, or?
Just sort of like adding to the point which you're saying, the sense of permanence, right?
Yeah, the sense of
You
permanence.
also mentioned that whatever experiences we go through, it leaves an imprint in our minds. And a lot of what we do right now is somewhere product of what has happened with us. Maybe that if you...
It triggers something in us, you mean? Because of what we...
behavior patterns. Even behavior patterns as such, they are shaped, like they're learned, right? So something happened in childhood and those patterns are carried forward, maybe in our interpersonal relationships, romantic relationships. So there is that always, that permanence of that event, but like in a different form. Because maybe, let's say, if I was bitten badly by a dog when I was small, right, every time I see a dog, it would create that same fear, right? So that
that's like
stays.
a past trauma, basically, that you
Precisely,
experience it
right,
in that life. Okay. Yes. So if there's a trauma, okay, like if Ama Ade has been tortured, she was in prison, so if any of you had been tortured and been in prison, that could be difficult. I get that.
Even for her, that person, it like themselves, it could be very, like when they're outside of that situation, it could still be, they could be carrying
it could still, it could still.
I just want to say just a small thing. Sometimes for many people, the trauma is not only what happens. Like it can be for a different person, it can be like small thing, but in their view, it's terrible. You don't have to, to be raped or being in presence to
of course.
to
Sometimes
experience.
just people laughing about you could be enough. Okay, let's pass it. There's someone in the back, so let's keep it open for now because they seem all to be connected. Yeah. So let's hear what you've got to say.
Yeah. So when we're reflecting on all the kindness from all other sentient beings that we experience in our life, isn't that almost reflecting on and being compassionate for dukkha of change? Because, oh wow, in a previous life we were really cold and someone brought us into our home and gave them warm tea and a blanket. All of those things we're reflecting on to have compassion or maybe empathy or whatever, that's kind of all dukkha of change. So that's, I guess, part one of the question. And is there something to be learned, or is there some reflection to be had on the opposite side of the coin, all the horrific things, right? Because if it's infinite, all these different like subtle streams of consciousness have been our mother, beautiful thought, right? I think we should live our lives as if that's true. Then all of the most horrific things, torture, rape, that also is there. So is there some reflection in Buddhist philosophy on that? So those are my two questions.
All right. Okay, so I'm not sure I understood the first part of your question. You're saying this is all change, it's no longer...
It's all dukkha of change that we're reflecting on, isn't it?
It's all what change?
It's all the dukkha of change.
Dukkha of change, oh, yeah, yeah.
It's all the dukkha of change that we're being like, wow, this was so amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
this dukkha of change, which Buddhism teaches us is
dukkha
not
of change, yes.
something
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is supposed to be necessarily what we grasp to.
Right,
but
so
all
suffering
that
of change or dukkha of change, yes.
Yeah.
That's true. It's a suffering of change, absolutely. But here it's not so much about saying, well, first of all, dukkha of change, of course, exists. The suffering of change does exist. But it's not about getting attached to it. That would be a problem. But rather recognizing the good stuff people have done for us. So it's a dukkha of change. But do you see a problem in that? No.
Like,
Okay.
maybe not
Yeah.
everything that's kindness that we're perceiving as kindness or something beautiful is dukkha of change. I think most of it could potentially be lumped into that. Because even like a smile, right? Like, wow, that's beautiful. That's still dukkha of change that you're like experiencing.
The thing is, like as ordinary people, what we experience in those cases, like being well cared for and this pleasant, that's definitely dukkha of change. If the other person is a Buddha, then from their side, of course, it's not. But what we experience is a dukkha of change. Yeah. So our experiences are dukkha of changes. That is absolutely true. But your second question, and as you also said, you just wanted to remark that, and it's true, but I don't think it's a problem. But the second question is about, this is a very common argument in the debate, for instance, or in a class setting. Well, all sentient beings have done so incredible things to us, but they've killed us all over and they've tortured us all over. So shouldn't we also remember that? Yeah, if it's beneficial, we should. Is it?
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
Yeah, it's not beneficial, that's the thing. I mean, these things happened out of negative emotions, right? They were under the control of negative emotions. They were under the control of anger and hatred and what have you. So I guess it's a bit like, no, it's kind of like being Annie with a stick in that moment. In the other case, it was their love and compassion, which are in the nature of their mind. Those are in the nature of their mind. They're in accordance with reality. They benefited themselves in that way, but also us greatly. So I guess it's like you just focus on the positive.
I think like the way my mother raised me is like see the good in others. It's basically synonymous with that, right? It's like you're seeing the good in previous lives. It's kind of more how like Buddhists would like think of it. But you could just see the good in others, right?
You're right. There are other techniques as well. Like I said, there's this technique. There's the technique of equalizing and exchanging self for others. And then there are all these other thoughts. For instance, like as you mentioned, when we look at a person and we don't feel close to them because we think they're an evil person, for instance. But there is no evil person. We just discussed it yesterday, I think. I said it like, there's no person who doesn't have a positive quality. And I think it's very important to also remember that, because our anger and our sometimes even hatred, or at least our aversion, zooms, right? Zooms into the negative aspect and it blows it up and there's no space for anything positive. And then we see that negative aspect and the person as one. And we totally ignore the positive sides. And that's the problem. And it harms us much more than it harms anyone else. But on top of that, it's a huge obstacle to our feeling of closeness towards others. And I think it's a good idea, definitely, to look at the good sides. And even if it's just having Buddha nature, having this incredible potential, having the potential to become like the Buddha, becoming a Buddha one day, becoming like the present Buddha Shakyamuni, or past Buddha Shakyamuni, or like the Dalai Lama and so forth. Yes, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I was just like, you brought up a stand-up comedian and you just made me think of this. The late comedian Norm Macdonald has a pretty racy but funny stand-up where he's like, imagine you're Hitler's dog. Hitler loved dogs, and that dog was probably treated really well, and Hitler gave it lots of compassion, and that's such a ridiculous thing to think about, like ever imagining Hitler having these like positive qualities because he's such a horrific figure. But it's a really kind of ironic, funny bit of like that dog being like, oh wow, I have such a great life. I have such a great owner here who shows me so much compassion. And it's a gross statement at the same time. But I think that's maybe like the most extreme example of one of the most like horrific figures of like, oh wow, he was possibly a very good dog owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good example.
Yeah, it's like,
Trust me, it's easier for you to talk about it as American than
Yeah.
me as a German.
yes, yeah.
I know the name of his dog. It was Rose, and he shot it.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, when he killed himself, he shot his dog because he thought the dog no one would take care of it, and the Russians would kill it. The Russians were coming closer to Berlin, or really had already arrived in Berlin,
Yeah.
and so the Russian army, and so he actually shot his dog first.
So it was a
His
shot of
wife-
compassion, maybe.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
because he felt like no, yeah. And I remember reading it. His name was Rose, but anyway, yes, that's usually an argument that Hitler at least loved his dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's even with Hitler, I mean that's
It's a heavy topic.
If it's like if you just see Hitler as evil, it doesn't do us any favor, and there were definitely also positive qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he loved his wife, though he had a crazy relationship with women. Yeah, that was like a whole different story. Yeah, Hitler is a little difficult. We usually don't start with someone like him, but yes.
Sorry if that like
No,
triggered anyone
no,
bringing that
you're
up,
right.
but like the comedian,
We cannot ignore it. We
Yeah,
cannot ignore it.
it's a fair point. You're like, oh wow, this horrific
Yeah.
figure was a good dog owner.
And also I think it's important how deluded he was.
Yeah.
It helps to understand how deluded he was. The thing is like, and actually one thing that now people know about, I guess because of his horrific actions, he had insomnia, he had digestive problems, his teeth were all rotting away, he was a drug addict. He got these incredible shots of some crazy drug that, I forget what it is, but some crazy drug, he was a drug addict, so his doctor was pretty crazy. So there's a lot of delusion, a lot of ignorance there, and incredible suffering. I mean, even then. So I'm not saying, this is so dangerous because the incredible suffering he created, saying having compassion with him, it's almost like condoning what he's done. No. But the thing is, it's about the actions, to condemn the actions. That's the worst part, what he's done. But to say he was 100%, I mean, even Hitler will become a Buddha one day. But it'll probably take a really long time because of all the non-virtue now. I mean, he'll experience the suffering of every living being. And boy, he was the greatest killer in this century. I think Hitler...
Be a hungry ghost for a long time.
Well, worse than that. Worse than that. Yeah, I think he was besides, all the concentration camps, 6 million Jews, millions of other homosexuals and Roman, No, gypsies. I don't want to use the word gypsy. Roman, what's the word now? Romans, yeah. So anyway, like what we call gypsy, like that's kind of a denigrating term. So he's killed so many people in the concentration camps, probably around, I don't know, maybe 10 million? I think 10 million in those few years. Plus, he was responsible for the death of 20 or 30 million people. I mean, he started the Second World War, so indirectly he was responsible for everyone who died in that war. I don't think anyone has killed that many people. If you Google it, it's probably the worst. You couldn't kill like that even 100 years ago. More than 100 years ago. You couldn't kill, you didn't have the means. But yeah, so in that way, there'll be many millions of years before that suffering may end, yeah. But anyway, you're right. In the end, that's absolutely true. So to see also the positive. But a little bit difficult, Hitler's been my mom. Yeah, well, maybe he was a really nice person at some point. It's hard to think, yeah, it's hard to believe, but it's also for our own psychological, for our own mental health, to think that it's not as solid as it seems. And that doesn't make the suffering of so many millions of people less terrible.
Bad first example. We want to work towards that one.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I'm just trying to say. So the thing is, it's good that you remind me. We need to be careful here. We need to be careful, and we need to take it slowly. We need to take it slowly. So what really stuck with me is, of course, this idea, and many of you have agreed, to think of the suffering of sentient beings. It's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. I'm trying to think. I mean, once you've moved past that, it's pretty simple. Once you've moved past that. But how to move past that? That's the problem. I mean, I can say it's all impermanent, but until you come to that point yourself, you'll feel that way. Now, the good thing is about Ama Ade. I asked already, Ama Ade, the problem is over now. Do you still feel like, okay, so that helps. So any past problem, it's okay. Past is okay. Present is a problem. Okay, all right, that's already, would you all agree? If you hear about the past problem someone went through, we all know it's over, and now pretty sure that they don't experience the same. I'm pretty sure, I mean, I don't know, in the end we don't know, but anyway, so let's say they don't, then it's okay. So impermanence is definitely helpful. But what if they experience it right now? And it's over next week? If they experience it right now, but if somehow we had a crystal ball and we would know it's over by next week, would that help? A week? A day? No? Not sure. Okay. So as long as it's still going on, and the thing is, we don't know how they experience it. We don't know how they experience it. I mean, it's suffering, and no one should experience that. So we put ourselves into their shoes, but it may actually give them more strength, and positive qualities may grow. Possible, right? There's someone experiencing a lot of trouble and a lot of difficulties, but then a day or two later, they become a changed person, and they do the most amazing things. Still difficult? Right? I mean, this is like, we never know. I don't know, and you don't know. But just the fact we don't know leaves doubt for that. We don't know how they experience it. So in general, no one should suffer. No one deserves to suffer. It's not something it's just not in the nature of our mind to experience it. Otherwise, we would crave it if it really was something we should. But we so don't want to have that experience. We're so, yes, go ahead.
I think my mind jumps. I think my mind jumps when I hear that the suffering of someone is ended. Mm-hmm. My mind jumps and invents and says, probably there's another person somewhere that suffers from the same thing. Mm-hmm. If a war is ending, I'm thinking about Africa and all the wars that are starting there. So it's like the mind creates an image that is never ending suffering, even though the suffering already ended. Mm-hmm. We create to ourselves and confuse ourselves that there is like permanent, like there is too much suffering around, and then we get
I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So he's saying that, well, even though I know Ama Ade's suffering is over, but there's someone else suffering. So I can be pretty sure there's someone else suffering. All right. So basically, we have two choices. We deal with it, or we look away. Really, it comes down to that, right? Either, like one thing that's quite interesting that I found in my own mind. When I was little, I got a little doctor case, and I wanted to become a doctor. My parents loved that idea, and they fostered that for many years. Until I realized I can't look at pus and I can't look at blood. It's disgusting. Okay. So then I wasn't so sure, but it was kind of like, what kind of doctor am I going to be without having to look at pus and blood? Okay. I left it at that, and then I became a nun. Then later on, with my dad being ill, having had a stroke, and sometimes I had to look after him when his wife was sick, and there was gross stuff. He has accidents, and there's stuff I have to touch and I have to smell and so forth. And the weirdest thing happened. I noticed it makes me gag. You know, I looked at it and I was, that's not weird. So like, ugh. And then I looked again, and the second time, I didn't have to gag. So it was really funny, like I looked at it and I was like, ugh. And then I made myself look again, and that was the gagging thing, so it was less. My mind had actually adjusted. He had like a wound or something, and it was so gross, I couldn't look at it, and I just thought, oh, it's just atoms, look at it. And I was like, oh. And at some point I didn't care. I thought, wow, my mind can adjust so quickly. This is how anyone can become a doctor. So initially you're grossed out, you want to throw up, you feel sick to your stomach, but if you do it again and again and again, you get used to it. That was a really good lesson to me. I thought, I could actually be a doctor. I had this thought in my mind, you know, you come to an accident and there are like limbs lying around, ugh, right now. But if I do it often enough, it's limbs, it's matter, it's just whether attached or not. It's like in my mind, what I create is not what's really there. Of course, there's incredible pain, but that can go away, and there's painkillers. So my mind started shifting. I could see these things, and sometimes even now when I look something that's so gross online, I remember, wait, there's nothing gross. And my mind is gross, but I look again. It doesn't exist in and of itself as something gross. Or suffering, it doesn't exist in and of itself as suffering. It's just because we don't want it, we label it such. Even certain bodily sensations, like I used chili before. Your mouth is burning. One person would say, wonderful, I want some more. And the next person would be, I don't know, upset and, you know, be whatever, try to get away or drink a liter of milk or what have you. So the point is, these are all sensations that actually a person who's realized emptiness directly, actually, they can literally cut off pieces of their body and give them away because they don't have the same pain sensation. It's very clear in the text. Once you've realized emptiness directly, you experience ultimate reality, that sense, my body, that sensation harms me, it goes away. Of course, there's a role, there's a purpose for pain and all that. I'm not denying that, but the point is there's also more than just the sensation that's taking place. In Vipassana meditation, they focus on that a lot, where you just watch pain and realize it's just a sensation. It's really just a sensation, a vibration, or I don't know, a pulling, whatever it is. And that discomfort has a lot to do with our conceptual mind. Okay? So, having seen that, that doesn't mean for the other person that is the case. They still experience it as something very real and terrible. But it helps us to see it for what it is. In that we put ourselves into the other person's shoes, but we don't start to suffer like them. That's not about suffering like them. Not even the Buddha does that. The Buddha no longer suffers. But it's understanding what it is. Yeah? So maybe putting yourself into the other person's shoes doesn't mean when the other person is depressed, you become depressed. That's not what's meant. So again, you have a sense of what's going on. You have a sense of what they undergo without you suffering. That I think is important. And that we need to learn. It's like a doctor. A doctor, if there's an accident, like if you want to really help sentient beings, either you don't want to help sentient beings, fine. It's up to you. It's up to everyone. I mean, in Buddhism, you've probably heard that even His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said on many occasions, don't become Buddhist. Not a good idea. It's not even a good idea. He said that on many occasions. Don't become Buddhist. You don't need to become Buddhist. Right? You have your own culture, you have your own religion. Take the pieces you find helpful. So it's up to you. Choose what you find helpful and leave the rest. But if you choose to take some bits, then that would be something that is definitely helpful. Love and compassion. Right? It makes perfect sense. And then there's no other way but to learn to look. Pus and blood, anything disgusting, you watch. Right? But in that moment, no one is saying you have to feel it, you have to throw up. You see, like, when I say put yourself into the other person's shoe, I wasn't saying, again, feel exactly that same pain. You couldn't. If a doctor were to do that, then they needed a painkiller, besides the fact you can't do that. So His Holiness, when the Dalai Lama, for instance, does it, he doesn't feel depressed if the other person is depressed. He doesn't feel sad, but he gets a sense of what it's all about, right? The boundary between him and that person is gone. I guess he has a feeling I'm part of that person. And just as I would do it for myself, I'll do it for that person. I think it's a lot more than, it's more than that. So don't allow negative emotions to set in. That is not, so I once translated, let me put it this way. I translated for one of my teachers, Geshe Thupten Pesang, an amazing meditator, an amazing teacher, who was in McLeodganj. Unfortunately, he hasn't been teaching for quite a while now because he's sick. But he once gave a teaching, and he was very sick when he was a student already of the Dharma, when he was studying at Drapung. And during the study of Uma, or middle way, or emptiness, he was too sick to go to the debate. He was too sick. And as I was translating, he talked about how difficult it was and how he did all the debates in his mind. He couldn't debate with his classmates, but he did the work on his own, and he excelled. He was better than his classmates later on. His knowledge, the way he thinks deeply, is beyond a lot what I ever witnessed. I mean, if you ask Geshe Dorje Damdul, wow, he says, wow, Geshe Thupten Pesang, he's something else. Everyone says he's something else. But anyway, that's so amazing about him. But when he told this story, you know, like when I studied these topics, I did have some problems being a woman in terms of certain things where I had some restrictions that I found very, very unbearable. I wanted to be a monk and not have these restrictions. Later on it got better, those went away, but for a while it was difficult for me to accept it. A lot of it came from my mind. Some restrictions were real, and later on they were undone. I mean, now they're no longer an issue. But when he said that, I remember I started crying. He was telling this story, and I was translating, and I was so overcome by suddenly having this person who had it even worse than I felt I had it at that time. He couldn't even go to the debate. He couldn't even go to the classes. He was lying flat in bed when his classmates were doing this incredible study. And it was like, oh my God, this is a lot worse. And I started crying. And Geshe-la's response said, when you hear about the suffering of someone and you start crying, that's not compassion. And I was like, yep, that's true. That's not compassion. When you see the suffering of that person, you understand what they've gone through, and now you feel determined to do something, that's compassion. So he drew this really beautiful line. He said, you put yourself into the other person's shoe, but that doesn't mean you feel it. So maybe I should have made it clearer. You get a good sense of what it's like to understand it. But instead, it brings out in this kind of courage, this determination, or more than ever, I need to do something. So it almost brings out a joy in you. Wow, I need it. For instance, let's say you sit down with a friend. This friend has undergone some terrible problems, and you listen to them, and you go, I'm so glad they talked to me. I can be with them. It gives you some joy that they shared with you. So you understand, you put yourself into their shoes in that you understand everything they've gone through. And instead of being pulled down, you feel, may they be free from that. May I be able to contribute. I think that's the solution. Yeah? I think I misunderstood previously when you said put yourself into the other person's shoe. I misunderstood in the sense I thought you meant at all times you just understand it and that's it. And why would that still pull you down? But now I understand it's like you go onto an emotional level, you take it to an emotional level in such a way that yeah, you can't do anything. You can do anything. You become like a doctor who comes to the scene of an accident and starts throwing up and is not able to treat the patients, right? Yeah, but the doctor understands exactly what is going on. They put themselves into that person's shoes in the sense they understand the degree of pain. How much painkiller do you have to give? Oh, more than someone with a toothache, that's for sure. You could kill them otherwise. How quickly do I have to react? They understand the situation fully, but instead of being overwhelmed, they get into action. And you see, like doctors in war areas, they sometimes don't sleep, but the adrenaline, it keeps them going. And it's an adrenaline that comes oftentimes, I believe, from that compassion, just wanting to help these people. And then they're done, and okay, they take a rest, wonderful. Yeah, so empathy needs to be, I misunderstood what you meant. It's not about feeling the same emotions, but it's still understanding what they're going through. And I think that's probably what you meant in the first place when you said empathy. So empathy here I don't define as when the other person is depressed, you feel depressed. If the other person has a toothache, you have to have a toothache and so forth. That leads to burnout. That leads to burnout. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, how many people are depressed? And if you are a psychiatrist or a psychologist, for instance, and you put yourself into every person's, you become more depressed than they are. Yeah, no. You have to work against that in that moment. I mean, it's not, you see, there's two scenarios though. You may react that way. It's a natural reaction. Now I'm glad I'm here. Now I'm glad I'm here. I don't have to go up. Is it 4:30? Oh, shoot. All right, we still have plenty of time of meditation, so forgive me if we haven't done it now, but I'm so glad you're bringing this up. So again, let me say one thing. You remember previously, I want to give you another example where it's just like that. Previously, I told you when we're in a group of people, we automatically go like, dislike, don't care. That's an automatic response, and we can't do much about it. But we can choose for it to continue or not, right? There's an automatic response. Similarly here, when we start meditating on compassion, there's an immediate response, and we may cry. But don't allow yourself to fall into depression. This you can all learn. So I definitely also have my moments. I see something terrible. I don't know about the Second World War, for instance. I mean, wow, the suffering in these concentration camps. I watched a lot of documentaries about these. I'm still not able to understand how this could happen. Especially my grandfather was part of it. So therefore, I watch it a lot. And I have my moments when I start crying. I mean, just I hear these horrible stories. But I can let go very quickly. I can let go quickly. And rather thought, this should never happen again. If I can do anything ever, it will never happen again. So it really helps me. It really helps me in that moment to see that suffering and to be more determined than ever, than to speak up if it's required, if it's necessary, to be well informed, to be able to make the right arguments, because it's happening in Germany right now, by the way. We have a party now that's actually, they're like a Nazi party. There's a party, it's called Alternative for Germany, and they were very close, they were coming very close to winning the last elections. They didn't. And I voted for the party I really don't like, because it was about them, this party I don't like, getting the most votes, because it would be the other one, AfD. I was petrified. I was thinking I'm going to give up my passport if there's this party. They're like a Nazi party, actually. They're all back now, right? It's very petrifying. So the thing is, similar stuff happens again. Never mind, it's not important. But this is why I'm very interested in what happened in the past, because if I can speak up, it's important. But it does depress me. I have these moments when I go, I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes I just start crying. But once the tears are gone, there is some relief, and I go, okay, enough. All right, it's enough. It's done. It's over. but now something needs to be done. So in a way, I feel I can control it. There is that moment, of course, that reaction that we all have. You know, permanence and suffering is so solid, and you know, and wishing for some lasting happiness and samsara. All that is part of my psychological makeup, but I can control it. I've learned to control it so that I can very quickly come out of it, but not forget. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's a normal reaction, but then you have to snap out of it. You have to snap out of it. Go, okay, it's over, it's done, it's impermanent, okay. And all I can do is, when the situation requires it, to make changes. But what is the best change I can make in this world? What is the best change I can make? And, well, not just make, not just need to make, but also can make. Change myself. The only thing I can really change is my own mind. But that is the best change I can make, because my deeds are more convincing than my words. My actions are more convincing than my words. We can influence people much better through our actions than through our words. Or, even with our words, if they come from a place when what we teach is actually practiced, then they have a different effect. Look at His Holiness. His Holiness talks about the same thing, and people go, wow. Right? Because His Holiness lives what He teaches. That's why any suffering should motivate us to make even more changes to our own mind. That we will never, that we move away from any hateful situation, from anything horrific, and replace it with that much love and compassion, that we can create some balance. Balance out the horrific other people that they exist. Fortunately, the worst people are few in numbers. Yeah, there are not that many serial killers, for instance. Oftentimes, of course, some of the serial killers, when they come into politics, it's a problem, or they turn into serial killers, if you like. But there are a minority, and I can create a counterbalance. You can, and everyone can. So to find that strength within you, that bravery, and say, now even more than before. Does that make sense? That's really important. So snap out of it. Okay, I've been depressed, this is terrible. You have tears in your eyes, fine. Yeah. I tear up as well. I'm a crybaby, by the way. I'm a total crybaby. Oh, cute cats and, you know, whatever else. Yeah, I crybaby. But I don't allow myself to cry for too long. Okay, some relief. It's relieving something. It's like a release. It helps. But then I snap out of it. Okay, even more so. Shouldn't waste time. Life is short. I shouldn't waste time. There's so much suffering. Look around. What am I doing? Yeah. And again, the analogy with the doctor works quite nicely. You know, like a doctor, when they're in an area where there's a lot of disease, they don't take much of a vacation. Of course, they sleep and rest enough, hopefully, to look after themselves. But then they go, okay, I shouldn't waste time. I'm not going to watch, I don't know, don't binge watch on some kind of TV series. I'm going to get working. And all of us should do that. All of us should do that. Does that make sense? So that's exactly what this Geshe-la said. It makes perfect sense, yes.
And you want to become a Buddha because you want to help suffering.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. But it's important, yeah, this whole thing of feeling depressed or feeling sad, this we need to deal with. Snap out of it, right? It doesn't help. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help anyone else. And you're not experiencing this, the other person does, and you being depressed doesn't help the other person. So get your act together, right? It's like the doctor. It's passing blood, it's terrible. Okay, I wouldn't want to experience it. It's terrible to experience it. It doesn't help me to get obsessing over that or start obsessing over that. Instead, what do I need to do? Do you think that's realistic? Okay, great. You've been very patient, but you don't have the machine. Okay, let the person. Okay. All right. But you be the next one.
So even this compassion that you defined again brings this sense of action that you have to do something. But this action should also, I think, not be attached to any expectation that you should, when you're doing something, it should not make it better for the other person, because then that again causes depression or, you know, like a feeling of, I'm not able to help in the situation, you know, and then it bogs you down in a way. Because
you guys are really good. This is really good for all the points you're making. You're getting right to the gist of it. Absolutely right. You're right. It's true. Oh. Oh. All right. Thank you. No, this is absolutely true. Yes. Because our mind, our very interesting self-centered mind, let's face it, we want to have results right away, right? It's kind of like we want to now say exactly the right thing. We want to solve the problem. We get so frustrated when we don't. Yeah, that's a very important point you're making. Very important point. So when we do something, we give our best. We're readily there. But let's not forget, even a Buddha can't stop someone from suffering. A Buddha can, he or she can teach the person to overcome their suffering in the long term. But when suddenly some karma ripens, they can't save them. There's stories of someone saying to the Buddha, seeing that the person's karma and saying, this person is going to die, you have to do something. You have to do something to save them. And he said, no, you can't save them. The karma has ripened, you can't do anything. And this is very, very interesting. There are many, many occasions when His Holiness the Dalai Lama, before someone died, he made a point to see them. He didn't kill them. So, for instance, I tell you a story. Mr. Noroji, who was responsible for the Tibetans to come to Meklauganj. There used to be an old English shop. It was called Noroji. A family from Mumbai. They were Parsis. They lived here before the Tibetans came. They had moved here. And there were not many people living in this area because there was a huge earthquake in 1905 that killed all the Brits that lived here. They had their summer residence here. Many British people died at that time. And they all left the area, so it was pretty deserted. There were still some buildings, quite a few buildings, but deserted. And when the Tibetans arrived from Tibet, they first were located, like His Holiness was located in Mussoorie. And then they have many other settlements all over India, but previously it was in a place called Mussoorie, which is also like a hill station. But Mr. Noroji, when he heard that, he thought, well, why not have them settle in Meklauganj? And he requested the government. He wrote a petition and the government agreed, and so the Tibetans came here. So it was the Noroji family that basically made this possible, especially Mr. Noroji. Anyways, not that many people knew. We heard, I mean, the shop still existed when I first came. Now it's torn down, it's no longer there. They both passed away. But first his wife passed away. She was quite elderly, and he was also probably in his 80s. So one day what happened was, His Holiness would always take the shortcut to come back from the airport. Always take the shortcut. Makes sense, you know. The environment, why not, you know, why would you take the long term? His Holiness is always for shortcuts. But that particular day, he instructed the people, he came from the west, he came back from some trip to the west, and he instructed his staff to take the long way. And Mr. Noroji heard, and usually he couldn't leave the shop, he could never come down to the temple. So that day, he was told, oh, the Dalai Lama is going to come by now soon, you know, so just that you know. And he went outside to wait for His Holiness. And His Holiness stopped the car as he drove past him. He opened his window and he talked to him and he gave him a lot of kindness and attention, right? Very beautiful. And that night, Mr. Noroji passed away. And there's so many stories. Our director, before he passed away, our first director, before he passed away, that day, His Holiness called him. He said he was actually murdered. He was killed. And so he was called to His Holiness, and His Holiness talked to him and gave him advice, and that night he died. I'm sure he knew. I'm sure he knew. And there are other stories. He knew the karma had ripened. There's nothing he could do. He could have told him, go here, go there. nothing would have happened. I mean, he would have gotten killed anyway. So sometimes there's nothing you can do. These are very beautiful stories. They're stories of the Buddha, but even with His Holiness, there are too many stories. I once heard from someone who was there, they said His Holiness once traveled to San Francisco, and there were a lot of there was a community, a lot of people who had AIDS. A gay community, and a lot of the people that was in the 80s, a lot of them were 90s, they had AIDS. So His Holiness went to see these people, and they were waiting for him. And the story goes that His Holiness walked up to this one man, and they used to have this handshake that was unusual. You know, like sometimes you see it in the movie. I can't even do it. Like, something, I don't know how to do it. Yeah, like this handshake, like doing something. Yeah, and His Holiness did this with this person. He walked up to someone, he did this handshake with this person, and everyone was like, how does he know to do that? And then he talked to this person, and that night he died. That night this person died. But they were so happy to have that personal interaction with them. So this is not unusual. You see it again and again written down. There are examples of the lamas doing that. They know there's nothing they can do. And they go with it. So if the Buddhas do it, we have to do the same. We help as much as we can, and then realize there's nothing. So see, karma is very important in this context, because there are different types of karma. Many different kinds of karma. We may have the karma to die unless someone helps us not to. Or we may have the karma to die and no one can do anything. We may have the karma to be sick for many years if we don't take medicine. Or we may have the karma to be sick for many years even if we take medicine. Which explains the fact that some people having an illness, they take the medication and they get better. Some people have the same illness, they take the medication and they don't get better. That's not unusual. I mean, there are certain things, if you take the medication, it will definitely help. But that's not always true, not even for a cold. Right? One person takes cold medicine, an hour or two later, they feel better. The next person, no change. Huh? Medicine, same disease. Doctors just say, oh, sometimes it helps, it doesn't help. They have no reason. But from a Buddhist point of view, it's karma. So we don't know what a person's karma is. If they get sick, let's say they get depressed, for instance. If we're a doctor, of course, let's say we're a doctor, okay, so they get sick. What kind of karma do they have? They had the karma to get sick, but they may have the karma to get better if someone gives them the right medicine. To find out, I step in and do whatever I can, of course. But then, if the medicine doesn't help, okay, it was not the type of karma I hoped. I did my very best. Can't do anything more. I can just be there for them, or maybe for their family, or advise their family to do the best they can. Right? If you're a doctor, you have to do that. It's not failure, it's karma. Right? So that letting go of our wish to change the world. The Buddha didn't manage. The Buddha didn't change the world in that, like, all the suffering was gone. He made a difference. I mean, in a way, he did change the world, but not in a way in which he, if he was omnipotent, would have done. Right? Very important. So we cannot take away someone's suffering. We can just help them. We can tell them the medicine to take, and they still have to take it. But even if they do, doesn't mean they necessarily get better, at least not at that point. That is very important. I'm glad you brought it up. So this is when this craving for success, when we get so frustrated, that's another type of affliction. Yeah. So, okay, I did my very best. I've done my very best. Can't do anything more, and be okay with it. Sorry, you've waited. That's the last that we're going to do tonight. And we'll do the meditation tomorrow, I promise. But I'm so glad I listened to your questions and found out a little bit more how you feel about doing these meditations. Yes, I learned from that. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I recently completed a psychology counseling course that's inspired by Buddhism. And something we learned was when we're speaking to a client and they're talking about childhood trauma or something difficult, it's natural for suffering to come up within ourselves.
Yeah.
And we meet what's coming up for ourselves, but we also step away from it because the focus is really on them and trying to do the best we can for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now I realize, that's beautiful how you put it. So you learn in that psychology course, you learn that the client or the patient in that case, so you need to put yourself, you need to understand it, but you need to step away when you feel it's pulling you down because you need to focus on the other person. That's exactly that. So if empathy means, if empathy is defined as you feel it all the way that you feel the emotions, empathy is not a good idea. If you define empathy differently, put yourself into their shoes without feeling the emotions, but fully understanding what they're going through, without feeling the same pain, then we need empathy. So it's just a matter of how we define it. Does that make sense? Your original question, right, about empathy. Can we agree on that? Yeah? So I think basically we all agree. I mean, when it says in the medical profession don't have too much empathy, they're defining empathy differently. So it's still, I still find it's important to help someone, right? First we need to fully understand it. Like a doctor needs to understand. They ask, what is the pain of a scale of 1 to 10? So you get an understanding how great the pain is, what they need to do. They ask a lot of questions to fully understand what the patient is going through without experiencing the same pain. Yep. And psychologically, works in the same way, except here the pain is not physical. Great. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sorry, it took me a moment to really understand that. I just didn't understand fully what empathy meant in that moment. And of course, as I said in the very first class, don't agree with anything I said. If there's more that comes up, maybe during the evening, in the evening time, then by all means bring it up tomorrow. And we can continue to talk about it. But the point is, yes, tomorrow we'll definitely do a meditation. I do it in the morning. I'll do it in the morning. We'll start with setting the motivation. I'll say a few words about the meditation and then we do the meditation. Now we're left with the discussion group. Okay, so you have the chance to further exchange. And again, as before, one part I would like you to do is to talk about anything you've learned so far. Whatever you learned is practical. What can you bring into your own personal life to make hopefully some positive changes, right? And even if it's nothing, please talk about it. It's important. And also, let me know about it, because then it's just my failure to present it in such a way that it could be relevant, right? And I can make further attempts to talk about that. Because as I said on the first day, it is so abstract. It feels so abstract, but none of it is. It's actually very, very practical. It's just a matter of bringing it across in that way. And if you were like an advanced class, I would probably use all the technical terminology and let the abstract be abstract. But that's not, you don't know the terminology yet. So it's important to kind of present it in a slightly different way. Secondly, what would I want you to do? Further discuss this compassion thing. Empathy or not. I think it's good to, any kind of disagreement on that, is it at all possible to learn about the sufferings of others and snap out of it? And how to snap out of it? How to step away from it? How to do that? Right? That's important. So all of you may have ideas. And again, the more minds, the more ideas there are, and the more we can learn from others. Great, wonderful. So have a lovely evening, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Okay. Just to dedicate, of course, in the very end, it's page 31. That short prayer But of course, it's not the prayer that is most important. It is the thoughts that precede that. So dedication is mental, which is why I want you to take a moment to think whatever positive potential we've accumulated here, not just on our own, but as a group. All of us contributing in different ways to everything we discussed today. May none of that just ripen in the form of some insignificant positive experience, but rather become a cause for us to further understand our mind, to reduce our harmful afflictions, to learn how to increase our positive ones, and eventually totally free our mind from any disruptive emotion, from any kind of limitation, so that we can be of greatest benefit to others through our words and through our example. So with this in mind, let's recite the prayer. May the precious bodhicitta arise, if not yet born. When generated, may it never diminish, but increase more and more. Okay, thank you.
So 6 to 6:45 is okay for the discussion, and then 7 to 7:20. 7 to 7:24. And tomorrow morning, by the way, 6 to 7 is a full moon day, so we'll do the medicine group.
Ah, yeah, okay.